Well, I'm going to try to take a little bit of a step back from the specifics of what's going on in every one of your career programs and talk to you about why this idea of a career pathway is so strategic to your company, to the economy, and to the workforce in general. And you know, I've been working on this for a long time, and we just finished this piece of research with Guild that I think you're all going to copy of. But it does start with the economy, and the economy. There we go. As you know, we've been through about 14 years of economic growth. It seems to be slowing down pretty significantly right now. And during that period of time, we've been through technological revolution, political revolution, social revolution. If you remember in 2016 when I was at Deloitte, employees were overwhelmed then. They didn't know what was about to hit them with the pandemic. Now we have interest rates shooting up. Now we have inflation. It's been really, really disruptive. But one thing that's happened along this entire evolution is technology. And most of you, and I'm talking about the private sector people here, not the educational institutions, but most of you realized during the pandemic that you could do a lot more with technology a lot faster than you realized. Everything that thought it was going to take a year got done in a week or a month. And so that things have speeded up. But there still aren't enough workers. And we were talking about this yesterday in the executive session. Every piece of evidence I've seen refutes the idea that technology is going to take away jobs. Technology changes jobs. It makes jobs better. It makes jobs more sophisticated, more human-centered. But we now have the lowest unemployment rate in, I think, 50 years coming out of this period of time with all this technological revolution. And by the way, people working from home has increased the mobility of people between companies as well as within companies, and I'll talk about that in a minute. That's another reason for career pathways that I'll show you. And of course, as you know, most of you have seen this, it's particularly true in healthcare, but it's true in virtually every other industry. Everybody is working very hard, and if you read the research that Microsoft produced 2 weeks ago, 87% of employees believe they're highly productive, but only 12% of executives agree. So we have even more, I mean, it's called the productivity paradox. So it's going to get worse because if we do have a recession or the economy slows down, CEOs are going to be even more concerned about what people are doing, and they're going to expect more out of their workforce. So this is sort of the world we live in. Now, Rachel shared you the information that she, is launching today from the Guild research. This is research, the kind of thing that I run into all the time. Constantly exit interview surveys, employment engagement surveys, surveys by various different survey providers. The reason people leave jobs, this was McKinsey, the reason people leave jobs is because of lack of growth. And so we all know that, we all accept that. And it's even worse than that, because now, during the pandemic, about a third of the workforce changed jobs in the last year. 1/3. That's the highest quit rate the United States has ever seen. It's not quite as high right now, but it's pretty high. 45% of those people changed industries. Now think about that. Mobility between industries. People who worked in healthcare decided, I'm kind of tired of healthcare, I want to go work for Disney. Or people who worked in telecommunications saying, oh, I can get a job at Google now. Now that I got my data science degree, I'm going to go over and work for a tech company or a bank. So we're dealing with this workforce that is very mobile, learning how to become much more empowered over time. And Guild is, of course, fueling this through the education programs that you're developing there. And if they work from home, if they happen to be a white-collar worker, they can change employers just by changing email addresses. They don't have to go to a new office. They don't have to go to a new building. They don't have to move. And in fact, I was talking to an economist from ADP last week. Mobility, physical mobility, dynamism is actually reduced. People are not moving between cities at the rate they have in the past because housing prices are very high. So they're moving virtually. So the workforce is very, very agile. And it's going to get worse. It's not going to get better. A lot of economists are busily talking about how we need to get the unemployment rate up so that we can slow down inflation and the old relationship between inflation and unemployment. I don't think that's going to happen. The fertility rate in every developed country, the US, the UK, Germany, the Nordic countries, most of the developed countries in Europe, is far below replacement. Kids aren't people are not getting married as quickly. They're not having as much children. So this issue of reusing, skilling, engaging, retaining people, moving people into new roles is really going to become business survival, is the way I see it. Now, let me just talk a little bit about, sort of the data behind this. What we do, so we're basically an advisory company. We do research, and we really try to help people in HR better understand where to focus their times. And over the last year, what's been happening is every single call we get from one of you is sort of the same call. We're company A. We're moving into some new industry, some new domain, some new technology strategy, and we don't have enough people that know how to do that, so we're going to try to train them all. But we're not sure how to do that, so maybe we need to hire them. But we can't really hire them because maybe there aren't enough of them, so maybe we need to come up with new career paths internally. And the reason we're hearing this, industry after industry after industry, is that every industry is changing. And what happened was, and I sort of lived through this during my 7 years at Deloitte, was that in the beginning of the digital revolution, companies said, let's create a website, let's create a mobile app, let's create a store so people can buy our products online. And they spent a lot of time doing that and billions of dollars doing that. And then they realized, oh, our company has to operate differently. We need to be more agile. We need to be more developmental. We need to look at data more quickly. And then the pandemic came along, and all of that got accelerated, and people went home, and we had hybrid work and remote delivery of products and services and so forth. And then they realized, and they woke up and they said, our industry just changed. We're in the healthcare industry, but we have retailers entering our industry. We're in the telecommunications industry. No, we're in the media industry. Oh, maybe we're also in the professional services industry. We were in the internal combustion car industry. Now we're in the electric car industry. And I was telling everybody last night, the technology relationship between ICE cars and electric cars is the only thing that's really the same is the wheels. Everything else is different. And so what these companies were realizing was we need different job types, we need different job models, different job descriptions, different skills. Things we're just not comfortable with, we now have to figure out how to do. Now, we just did a huge study of the healthcare industry. I know a lot of you are in the healthcare industry. And by the way, a lot of you helped us with this, so I just want to thank you. And in the area of clinical roles, based on the data that we collected with our data partners, we basically came to the conclusion that there will be a gap in clinical professionals of about 2.1 million nurses in the next 3 years. And that's because about 3 million will leave the workforce. The retention, or the average age of a nurse, I think, is 52. You guys know this better than I do. The retention rate is, not super high. They're leaving the profession for a whole variety of reasons. So there'll be 2.8 million left. There's about 1.1 million that can be recruited into the workforce, so there's going to be a gap of 2.2 million. If you go out and try to find those people, only about 350,000 of them can be recruited. There aren't enough in the workforce. If you try to retain them, you can probably save about 400,000. Reskilling will handle about 500,000, and the remainder have to be filled through redesign of the job. And so what's going on in healthcare is they're looking at their talent gap, being the clinical professionals, and they're saying, we've got to do all 4 of these things at once. And so what I was showing the executives yesterday was this issue of hiring or training people is now a systemic problem. We have to look at recruiting, we have to look at retaining, we have to look at reskilling, and we have to look at redesigning, all in an integrated way. And that's a big challenge for HR, because HR departments are really sort of set up as COEs. There's a recruiting COE, there's an employee experience group, there's a there's a L&D group, and then there's a little OD group. Well, those groups are going to have to come together. And one of the biggest, really innovations in doing this is the career pathway. Now, let me give you one more piece of data on why I think this is so big. For those of you that have followed our research all these years, one of the things we do constantly is these big studies of various parts of HR. So we just finished a massive study of the L&D domain. And we had 1,000 or more companies contribute through these surveys. We scored all of these practices and what these companies were doing in different areas. And what we found is that the companies that are outperforming in financial performance, in human capital performance, in growth and innovation, were focused on one thing, and that was employee growth. Not skills per se, not just for the sake of skills, but growth of the employees into the next role, the next opportunity, the next position for them. That's not the same as just skilling people, right? It's different. Skilling people is a piece of that, but finding the next role and facilitating that move and giving people coaching and giving people support, including education where needed, is a different problem than having a whole bunch of skills programs out there. And unfortunately, for those of you in L&D, I'm sure you've drunk the Kool-Aid from all the vendors. Oh, let's just buy my tool and turn it on, and we're going to have all these new skills in your company. And what we found, with the study is that's just not enough. And this is the data, and I won't bother you. You can get these slides later. But we looked at like 80 different practices, and everywhere we looked in the data set, it was about growth, 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 growth. And that is what the career pathway is all about. Now, when we started talking to Guild, and we were working on this before, we had to sort of redefine what a career pathway is. Most people think of a career path as the traditional job, family career path. I join as a junior engineer. I worked in an oil refinery for 2 years, for example. Join as a junior engineer, you become a project engineer, you become an advisory engineer, you become a senior engineer, you become an engineering manager, engineering director, right? You go up that path. That's just not the way companies work anymore. Those are still there, but they're a relatively small part of what's really going on. Companies are opening new products, they're going into new areas, there's new divisions, there's new geographies, there's a merger. I had this fascinating conversation with someone who works at One Medical about what it's like to have somebody from Amazon come into One Medical and tell them how to run their operation. By the way, I won't tell you the details of that, but this is what's going on in this sort of weird combination of industries. And so what we need is a framework and a structure and a set of programs for people to move across careers, which is what we call a career pathway. A pathway is a non-linear move or transition or growth path that we all really makes us the most successful people in our lives. So if I think about my career, I've had like 10 different careers, and that's the only reason I'm capable of doing what I'm doing now is because I've had these opportunities to jump from place to place. Luckily, I went to college and I had a good education behind me, but if I didn't, some of that is going to be getting a degree or learning how to write or learning about math or learning about business or whatever it may be. So career pathways are really an essential issue in every company, not just for the frontline worker, even for professionals, people who have, if you work at IBM and you are in the COBOL mainframe division, you need a career pathway out of that group because that group's not growing anymore. So they need career pathways too. So this is a big deal going across virtually every part of the workforce. Tuition reimbursement is a piece of this. You know this, you've heard this from Guild. We thought many years ago when I first studied tuition reimbursement that it was going to be a reskilling tool. It wasn't. It was a benefit. Most companies didn't really know where it was going, and it wasn't really widely used. Now that we have vendors like Guild pulling it all together, we can take all of that money that's been spent on various maybe semi-haphazard programs going on inside of companies and move them to these career pathways that we need. And one of the things that we help companies with a lot is figuring out what are the career pathways that are the most strategic to you. Because this is complicated. This is not sort of buying a course from a vendor and turning it on and expecting to build these new careers. This is a somewhat handcrafted approach. And this is why I have such admiration for Guild, because Guild has learned that they can help companies build these things in a very, very strategic way. Under the covers of this, by the way, is data. And if you're in a large company, one of the things we really encourage people to do is start to look at the data. We have a bunch of data that we look at. Some of the research that we're producing is based on data that we get from a big talent intelligence vendor. And the more data you have, the more intelligent you can be about the trending career pathways and jobs that you're going to need more and more of, and the ones that are declining in value or declining in utility inside of your company. So behind this is the ability for you to build a better muscle in understanding these growth paths and where the most strategic needs that your company has as it transforms. And there's a big ROI. I mean, I don't need to tell you this, but I just finished publishing a book that's out, by the way. If you want to read my new book, I won't spend a big pitch on it, but it's called Irresistible, and it was really 8 or 9 years of research on high-performing companies and what's different about them. And what you find in high-performing companies that last for many, many years, and David's going to talk to you about GE in a little while, and you can hear this story about GE, is the way they endure over business cycles, over technology cycles, is they transform their workforce all the time, and they invest in this. So this isn't just a good thing to do because it makes employees happy. It really is about business success and really business performance for many, many years. Okay, that's kind of the story. We are really proud to have been working with Guild on this. I hope you all learned a little bit from my short presentation today, and thank you for the opportunity to come speak to you. Thank you.